On today's order paper, the Senate is scheduled to consider a number of bills that will be coming for the Committee of the Whole. That is the afternoon sitting. And among the bills that are listed for the Committee of the Whole, they include bills like the coffee bill, Senate bills number 10 of 2023, that is sponsored by the chairperson, the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock, and Fisheries. There is also the Public Holidays Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 1 of 2023, that is sponsored by Senator Karungo Dhangwa, that is coming for second reading. And the other bills that are listed for second reading include the County Assembly Services Amendment Bill by Senator Mohammed Chute, the Real Estate Regulation Bill by Senator Kiprotich Chesang, the Senator for Trans Nzoia, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill that is sponsored by Senator Godfrey Ososi, and also the Public Transport Motorcycle Regulation Bill sponsored by Senator Boni Aloale, and the Public Finance Management Bill, Amendment Bill rather, sponsored by Senator Haminda Ali Kibwana. In the morning, during the morning sitting, the Senate adjourned due to lack of quorum, and we expect that some of the business that was to be considered during the morning sitting will also be considered by this afternoon sitting. There will be a number of statements and questions that will be sought by a number of senators. And key among the requests for statements will be statements by the Senator for Nyandarua County, Senator John Medhu, will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare regarding the termination of contracts of community scouts by the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS. And the Senator for Kisumu County, Professor Tom Ojienda, Senior Counsel, will also seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, Foreign Relations concerning the safety, security, and well-being of police officers on duty. Nominated Senator Betty Montent will seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transportation, and Housing regarding the renovations of stadiums identified to host the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations that will be held by the three East Africa countries, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And then the nominated Senator George Mbugua will also seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare concerning the delay in the operationalization of the Social Assistance Act 2013. This is the bill that establishes the National Social Assistance Authority that take care of the vulnerable members of society. And the programs like the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program are anchored under this act, and there has been quite a long delay of 10 years since this act was enacted. And the nominated senator rather, George Bogo, will be seeking to find out the reasons why the other act is yet to be operationalized. And then the senator for Migori County, Senator Andy Okech, will also seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations regarding the diplomatic relations between Kenya and the Kingdom of Morocco. And then there are a number of statements that will be issued by the various committee chairpersons on the activities of their committees, and key among them will be the chairperson, Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock, and Fisheries will make a statement relating to the activities of the committee for the period July to December 2023, as well as the Standing Committee on Health, the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs, and Human Rights, the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment, and Natural Resources, the Standing Committee on National Cohesion, Equal Opportunity, and Regional Integration, and also the Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations, in addition to the Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization, and Tourism. You can see senators are streaming to the chamber, and the senator for Narok, Honorable Ledamo Lekina, has already stepped into the House and also Senator Miraj Abdullahi and Deabte Maina are also in the chamber in readiness for today's sittings. The other committees that will make their reports on the activities of their committees include the Roads and Transportation and Housing will also make a statement relating to the activities of the committee, and also the County Public Accounts Committee that is led by Senator Moses Kajwang. And there'll also be the Select Committee on Public Investment and Special Funds that is led by Senator Godfrey Ososi. And the procession of the Speaker has approached the chamber. And the presiding Speaker is Honorable Speaker Jeff Emerson Kingi-Rather. And we hand you over to the Senate proceedings. Thank you.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you've committed to our charge. Amen. Next order. Under order, Senator Issa.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, the 6th December 2023. 1. The report of the Auditor General on the Kipkelion Sub-County Level 4 Hospital for the year ended 30th June 2022, County Government of Kericho. 2. The State of the Judiciary and the Administration of Justice Annual Report for the financial year 2022-2023, and the Blueprint for Social Transformation through Access to Justice for 2023 to 2033. And the Annual County Government's Budget Implementation Review Report for financial year 2022-2023. I beg to lay. Thank you.
Honorable Katuri Murungi to lay the paper.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, the 6th December 2023. The 63rd session of the OACPS Parliamentary Assembly and 43rd session of the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly meetings in Brussels, Belgium.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Majority Leader. Senator Charangai, what is your intervention? Certainly, it cannot be a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, no, I am standing on the number 58. I'm standing on the number 1 with your indulgence to which says during a statement now, a senator may, by the indulgence of the Senate, explain matters of personal nature, although there is no question before the Senate, but such matter may not be debated. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, yesterday, we unfortunately adjourned unceremoniously because, Mr. Speaker, remember tomorrow is the last day of this session. As we talk, our offices are paralyzed. Office operations have not been paid. Our landlords are closing offices across the 47
Senator
counties.
Cherange, are you there for proceeding to make a statement under Standing Order 58?
Yes, Mr.
But
Speaker,
I've
sir.
not indulged you. If you read
Okay,
that-
let me sit and then you indulge, Mr. Speaker.
Let's proceed with the notice. Senator Cherengei, you will make your personal statement immediately after the notice is given.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to give notice of the following motion, namely the alteration of hours of meeting on Thursday, December 7th, 2023. That notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate met on the 16th of February 2023 and on 29th of March 2023, pursuant to Standing Order number 32, on the approval of the Senate calendar on regular sessions for the second session, the approval of the Senate calendar, and pursuant to Standing Order number 34-4B, the Senate resolves to alter its hours of meeting on Thursday, 27th, 2023, to hold a morning sitting commencing 9:30 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. instead of the afternoon sitting. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
But now, Senator Cherengei, I've looked at this particular standing order, the one you're invoking. And apparently, it talks of matters of a personal nature. And the statement we are just about to make, if your opening statement is anything to go by, it's not personal. It touches on the operations of yourself and your colleagues. It's more official. And therefore, I would advise you during today's proceedings, you can raise on a point of order. You bring it up as a point of order, but not under Standing Order 58, because 58 restricts you to matters of a personal nature. And I don't think paying your workers at the county office is a matter of a personal nature. I think it's more official. It touches on your mandates. So I will allow we proceed on. At some point, you can rise on a point of order to put it across. Then I'll allow your colleagues also some time also to contribute to that point of order. Next order, clerk. Now, honorable senators, allow me to reorganize the sequence of today's order paper. Instead of going to order number 7, which is questions and statements, we'll move to order number 8, the motion for alteration of hours of the meeting on Thursday, that is tomorrow. We dispense with that motion, and then we can go back to the flow as contained in today's order paper. Clerk, can you proceed to call that order?
Order number 8, motion. Alteration of hours of meeting on Thursday, 7th December 2023.
Majority Leader.
I rise to move motion number 8, being the alteration of the hours of meeting on Thursday, 7th December 2023. Mr. Speaker, that notwithstanding the resolutions of the Senate met on the 16th of February 2023 and on the 29th of March 2023, pursuant to Standing Order number 32, on the approval of Senate calendar for the second session, the the approval of the Senate pursuant to Standing Order number 34-4B, the Senate resolves to alter its hours of meeting on Thursday, December 7th, 2023, so as to hold a morning sitting commencing from 9:30 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. instead of the usual afternoon sitting. Mr. Speaker, these are a procedural request to meet important engagements of this Senate, outside this Senate, outside this country, in Rwanda, Mr. Speaker, so that members can be afforded an opportunity to travel to Rwanda and represent the country in this very important event. Mr. Speaker, it is gratifying to note that since the appointment of Honorable Ababu Namwamba as the Minister of Sports, the country is on an upward trajectory in the performance of sports. It's only yesterday when the under-16 team, Mr. Speaker, qualified for the finals in Kakamega, Buhungu Stadium, and Kenyatta International Stadium in Kisumu. Mr. Speaker, I therefore have no doubt that if we allow members of this House to go to Iyala, the same spirit will continue. The only negative side which I must make in this House is that, Mr. Speaker, it has not been too clear how delegations are traveling. So much so that what we witnessed last year is not obtaining this year. My office is up in arms that they are not being afforded an opportunity to travel. And yet another office fairly near to me, staff are traveling, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if we don't manage this properly, it can send the message that to participate in parliamentary functions, one has to do something else. It is this something else. Mr. Speaker, I know why Edwin is laughing. It is this something else that some of us don't know. Going forward, let these things be clear so that things are done above board. Little complaints from people who work in our offices does not sit very well with us. Similarly, when you see a certain group of officers moving, going for the function and not the other officers, you wonder what was the selection criteria. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to appeal to members. We all stand behind this motion, support it, and let our members represent us in Rwanda. I will not be traveling, but I would have loved that members from my office travel, but next year will also come. God is there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move and request the whip on the minority side to second this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion by the Honorable Senator Khalwale. Mr. Speaker, as a member of the SPC, this is a matter that I am aware we discussed before the committee, that in fact, in order to accommodate those of our colleagues who have been lucky enough to represent our parliament in the East African Legislative Games, we move the sittings for tomorrow's afternoon to the morning session so that we can complete some of the matters that are on the order paper. Mr. Speaker, it is always a concern for us at the SBC when we see certain matters taking too long on the order paper, and especially the matters that affect legislative business. There are some bills that are due for division after second reading, and some that are due for the committee of the whole house. And in consideration of the fact that we are proceeding for the long recess starting Friday, Mr. Speaker, it is quite urgent that we are able to find the opportunity to process this business before our colleagues travel. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I will be making an appeal to all the senators who might be traveling tomorrow. Please avail yourselves in the morning sessions. The SBC was also kind enough to make sure that the session tomorrow and even today is a hybrid session. There is no reason why you can't be able to log in from wherever you are, unless, of course, you traveled only with sporting attire that would not allow you to participate in the sessions here. So, Mr. Speaker, I strongly second, and I'm hoping that tomorrow and today we can be able to make some progress so that we lighten the order paper before we proceed to the long recess. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Not lighted. Thank you, Senator Chirange. Kindly take your seat. Honorable Senators, I will now proceed to propose the question that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 16th of February 2023 and the 29th of March 2023, pursuant to Standing Order 32 on the approval of the Senate calendar regular sessions for the second session 2023, pursuant to Standing Order 34 4B, the Senate resolves to alter its hours of meeting on Thursday, December 7th, 2023, to hold a morning sitting commencing 9:30 a.m. and ending 1 p.m. instead of the afternoon sitting. Now, honorable senators, of course, you have the right to contribute to this motion, but it is a motion that really doesn't require us to spend a lot of time debating on this. If you're agreeable, you would allow the chair to put the question. Very well. Now, honorable senators, I will proceed to put the question. That notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 16th of February 2023 and on the 29th March 2023, pursuant to Standing Orders 32 on the approval of the Senate calendar regular sessions for the second session 2023, pursuant to Standing Order 34 4B, the Senate resolves to alter its hours of meeting on Thursday, December 7, 2023, to hold a morning sitting commencing 9:30 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. instead of the afternoon sitting. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Yes, Senator Chirange.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I raise under Standing Order number 96. Mr. Speaker, and also with your indulgence, understanding order number 1. As we talk, Mr. Speaker, even as we are happy that the session is coming to an end, Mr. Speaker, we are not sitting pretty with our staff. They have not been paid office operations. The Parliamentary Service Commission have found it not unwise, and it is disappointing that the commissioners are not here, Mr. Speaker. Salaries have been not paid for our workers. Our landlords are closing our county offices across the 47 counties, Mr. Speaker, sir. There is no money. Virtually, the service providers want to auction the Senate furniture that has been put in most of our offices, Mr. Speaker. As we talk, even our cars, Mr. Speaker, when we travel to our counties, might be clamped down and auctioned, and we might making phone calls to your office or your personal number to try and intervene, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you saw yesterday when the National Assembly boycotted, they have been assured within the close of business today, their money will be in the accounts of CDM, Mr. Speaker. Why are they discriminating against the Senate by the National Treasury, Mr. Speaker? I want to say, even the tomorrow's morning sitting, we shall not come, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, as we talk today, Mr. Speaker, we are going to work out, Mr. Speaker, because we cannot proceed until, Mr. Speaker, until we resolve this impasse. We are going to cripple the old business that we, because if there is no money, what business do we have, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, you know, with the harsh economic times, Mr. Speaker, with the harsh economic times, how can you, these drivers, Mr. Speaker, spend a lot of small money, Mr. Speaker. When they drive us and they're angry, they can drive us out of the roads and cause accidents, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even our secretaries, our personal assistants, Mr. Speaker, can you lead us and listen to our cries, Mr. Speaker? This Senate has ever come under attack in the year 2018, 2019. And it is you, Speaker, who led us all the way to Milimani High Court when we were filing against non-concurrence of 24 legislation, Mr. Speaker, by the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I would have expected the National Assembly to also boycott and be in solidarity with us the way we were in solidarity with them yesterday, Mr. Speaker. But it looks like the small brother, the lower house, will never be in solidarity with the Senate. But Mr. Speaker, I want to request colleagues. We request that this session be suspended for now. Mr. Speaker, you make phone calls to the National Treasury because, and also Parliamentary Service Commission, Mr. Speaker, we suspend for 30 minutes. You get a commitment. We go into a recess for another 30 minutes. We agree on how we are going to proceed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under indulgence and the direction leadership, you need to provide leadership on this one, Mr. Speaker. I don't think you will be sitting pretty. I can tell you, you'll have to switch your phone because we will call incessantly. We will also give your number to our workers, our staff, so that they call and explain the situation, Mr. Speaker. Because vitu kwa ground is different, Mr. Speaker, sir. So as we talk, we have been using our own money to fuel and support most of our workers, Mr. Speaker. Some of them have school fees. Some of them have medical bills to pay, Mr. Speaker. They have rent, Mr. Speaker. You can imagine working to your office and your staff have not been paid. Mr. Speaker, with the harsh economic times, we must be serious, Mr. Speaker. I request that we adjourn this, we suspend this house for 30 minutes, talk to the National Treasury, give us way forward, then we resume the sitting as normal, Mr. Speaker. And I think going into the future, I want to call upon Parliamentary Service Commission. There is no house that is lesser than the other. When the National Assembly speak, they listen. But when Senate speak, ni kama kupigia mbuzi gitaa, Mr. Speaker. We must take a collective responsibility. This Senate has come under attack from 2013, but we have always been resurgent. They should not underestimate us, Mr. Speaker. We look like dormant volcano, but we are going to erupt that it has never been seen before, Mr. Speaker. I expect people like Senator Chute to be on the forefront defending us, Mr. Speaker. You had Senator Sifuna yesterday led us in a Kamkunji, and we made a resolution that we shall not sit until we get our dues, Mr. Speaker. It is our right. How can we work, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I request that you suspend this sitting and we agree, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect.
Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, I want to support the request by Senator Cheregei that this is a very serious matter. Mr. Speaker, just like any other workers, we cannot sit here and work if our hearts are troubled. And as Senator Cheregei has said, our staff have not been paid, our offices are being locked, and we are not able to pay our bills on the ground because of lack of operation money. And Mr. Speaker, I think we must take a serious action because this is more than just the money. It is the disrespect by the executive to parliament. And Mr. Speaker, even yesterday, I was so surprised that a PS...
Order, honorable senators. May the senator be heard in silence. May the senator be heard in silence.
So, Mr. Speaker, this is disrespect to the institution of parliament by the executive. They want to give us exchequer when they feel like they want to give. They want to punish us. And this means we will not be able to do our legislative work very well if we are not facilitated. And the Constitution is very clear that the parliament shall be facilitated. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with my neighbor that we stop this session, suspend this session, you make phone calls. I know the Speaker of the National Assembly did the same, and we have answers before we continue transacting. This kind of disrespect to the Senate and to you, Mr. Speaker, because you are the leader of the third arm of government. You must be respected. Even yesterday, I was surprised. A junior principal secretary trying to undermine your office, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker has a right to meet any diplomat, and parliament all over the world represents the diplomats of that country. In fact, this Senate requires, we need an apology
from the Principal Secretary of Foreign Relations, who made some very serious comments on our speaker. Our speaker has every right to meet any dignitary in this world because he's representing an arm of government. So this is a further confirmation of disrespect to this parliament by the executive, and I think I want to fully agree that we need to suspend this sitting, or we cause the suspension of this sitting the way we did it yesterday until our matter is addressed, Mr. Speaker. And forever, if the matter is not addressed.
Senator Gloria. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I want to reiterate that the Senate is actually being disrespected. Yet again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know we are the upper house. And every single time I tell people that, no, I sit in the upper house, I expect, Mr. Speaker, that the upper house is respected equally as the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, a lot of people don't know, but nominated senators, we don't have an operational fund, but we have employees. Today, actually 20 minutes ago, I checked, and my staff have not been paid. So, Mr. Speaker, for me, I want to call upon Parliamentary Service Commission, because they also have to come and give us a report and tell us, so that before we start saying the executive or who, Parliamentary Service Commission should be able to tell us if they have received money from the exchequer, and if they have not, or what is the position, Mr. Speaker. And it's very sad today that I don't see any commissioners in the House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are always complaining about our welfare. We are always complaining about, personally, I've been complaining about my office, about the welfare, about just the work environment, Mr. Speaker. But the commissioners are never here to hear our complaints, Mr. Speaker. So as we are even saying the Parliamentary Service Commission should come and tell us why we don't have our staff paid, Mr. Speaker, I also call upon the commissioners. They need to take this house seriously, Mr. Speaker. Some of us, we can do a better job as commissioners, Mr. Speaker, but because it is our first term, Mr. Speaker, we understand that we have to learn how the things work before we get that job. But Mr. Speaker, every time to be in a house complaining of our welfare, and the commissioners are not in the house, they are always traveling, Mr. Speaker, there's something wrong there. But finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. We are about to close, and I don't think it would be fair for our staff to go for Christmas without their salaries, Mr. Speaker. Some of them, when we tell us ourselves we don't have money, they cannot even imagine how we don't have money. But the truth of the matter is that senators are broke. We don't have money. Some of us, we are owed money in arrears. We are being told, even for those who travel, they are being told that they can travel, but they use their money, they'll be refunded ahead of time. So, Mr. Speaker, maybe what we are also calling for is transparency on that Senate budget, so that we know, even as we sit here, some of us who don't have an operational fund, we can know that, for instance, Senator Sifuna receives X amount of money for the operation of the office, so that we are able to track and oversight ourselves, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity.
Senator Sifuna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to assure my sister, Senator Gloria, that I do not receive any preferential treatment from Exchequer. That in fact, the amount of money that is assigned for office operations is the same for all the members of this House. Mr. Speaker, if she's not getting money, I can assure her that I'm also not getting money. Today, I want to speak as a taxpayer, Mr. Speaker. As members of parliament, we know that we are some of the highest taxpayers in this country as employed people. If the statistics are right, that it's only 1% of Kenyans who earn money, salaries above 100,000 shillings. I've heard it said somewhere. Then, Mr. Speaker, we pay on average in taxes per year alone higher than 99% of the rest of the country. And Mr. Speaker, whenever changes to our taxation is implemented, it is implemented immediately. We are already paying for the taxes that were imposed just a few months ago. Then the very least we expect is that we will be facilitated in our jobs. I want to make it clear to the country that senators are not asking for salary increases. You know, you will hear some people going and saying, oh, senators are crying for money. No, this is operations funds that have already been assigned and allocated to the Senate for purposes of facilitating the offices of the senators. And for some reason, the person responsible for disbursing money at Exchequer, at the point at which money has come in and deciding which department gets money and which one doesn't, or which one is not a priority, that person never prioritizes the Senate. In fact, members will remember that our system in here is due for an upgrade. In the budget for last year, we were given 200 billion shillings to upgrade this system that never works, including during important debates and divisions. But Mr. Speaker, the Senate cannot implement this. We have been told it will be transferred to the next financial year because they are not giving us that money. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in saying that somehow, because you see the reputation out there is that senators are a bit more reasonable people, that we were not going to do maandamano like the one we saw yesterday at the National Assembly. But I want to invite you leaders here. Maandamano is not such a bad thing. Sometimes it is Luya saying that it's only the children who cry that actually get fed by their mothers. If you don't cry, your mother assumes that you are okay. Mr. Speaker, there is a very serious trend. Actually, for me also, and I want to share this experience with the House, as SG of ODM, we have seen systematic reduction in allocation to political parties, for instance. And not to delve into the matter, we have been so frustrated as leaders of political parties by the year-on-year reduction on the allocation to the political parties fund that we've been forced to go to court. Maybe even for us as a Senate, we need to now take this matter to the courts so that the country can know that, in fact, there is a problem here. I don't know how much success we will have there because I'm also aware that the judiciary is also crying about their resources that have been allocated in the budget not being released to them. But somehow, one arm of government is not complaining. And that is why when Senator Osotsi was saying the executive does not refer to a political party. It refers to an arm of government. Somehow, Mr. Speaker, the members of the executive are living large. Just today, I saw a cabinet secretary wearing 4 million shillings watch on his wrist. I was like, Mr. Speaker, how is it possible in this economy? So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that if indeed the exchequer is going to be fair in releasing monies to the three arms of government, we need transparency in that office, not in my office, Senator Glory. The transparency needs to be in the office of a person who receives resources on behalf of all the arms of government and decides that this is a priority, this ministry is a priority, but this the Senate is not a priority. So I will want to join my colleagues in saying, in fact, for me, you don't need to convince me, as you know me, Mr. Maandamano. I can bring a sufuria here if I'm allowed, Mr. Speaker, so that we can shine the light on this particular issue, so that the country knows that the Senate is being mistreated. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chute.
Asante sana Honorable Speaker kwa nafasi hii. Ningependa kuungana na wenzangu kwa ile shida Senate iko nayo. Mheshimiwa Speaker, mimi nimetoka Marsabit County. Umesikia juzi Senator Lomanen wa Turkana akisema sisi tukienda recess saa hii tunaenda huko hatusikizi recess, tunasikia sauti ya bunduki ikipigwa kila mahali. Honorable Speaker, Marsabit County imekuwa flooded. Hata watu wameshindwa kufika mahali chakula hiko, center chakula hiko. Saizi inasaidiwa na helikopta, serikali haina helikopta ya kutosha. Tuko na shida kama hiyo. Honorable Speaker, wale watu wanafanya kazi kwa maofisi zetu hawawezi kupata chakula sasa kwa sababu wengine wako centers ambaye hawangeweza kufika, na wale watu wangesaidia hawa na chakula ambaye wanaishi katika vijiji hawawezi kupata hiyo pesa kwa sababu pesa ambayo ingefaa kuwa office operations mpaka saa hii hatujapata. Mheshimiwa Speaker, kila mahali ukiangalia vile distance ni mbali kutoka Nairobi, gharama ya vitu ni nyingi sana, shida ni nyingi sana, masomo kwa watu ni chini, chakula ni shida kupata. Kama ukisikia mtu wako Nairobi anaumia mara 10, sisi tunaumia mara 100. Kwa sababu ya shida ya vile tunasafiri, shida ya bunduki na lia risasi, kiangazi ikikuja inakuwa extreme, mvua ikikuja inakuwa extreme, flood inakuja, bunduki ndio hiyo. Kwa hivyo Honorable Speaker, watu wakienda recess kesho, mimi sijui kama nitaenda Marsabit. Kwa sababu nikienda huko, watu ile family zao wakipata hiyo pesa ingesaidia. Sasa family hizo saa hizi hawatakuwa na pesa ya kula. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, ile shida tuko nayo, tuko kwa serikali moja. Hata ukisikia kuna watu wako pande ya opposition na pande ya serikali, sisi zote vile tuko tuna serve nchi moja, watu moja, family moja. Ukiona jana bunge pande hiyo nyingine walisusia kazi, leo wamerudi kwa sababu wamekubaliwa kulipwa marupurupu zao. Mheshimiwa Speaker, hii nyumba inaitwa Senate. Mimi naona kama inaonyeshwa kama ni nyumba haina maana kwa nchi hii. Mheshimiwa Speaker, kwa sababu ukiangalia mara ngapi tumeona maministers wakati wanakuja hapa mbele wanakataa kuja, wanasema wako wagonjwa, mara wanasema wako safari, mara wanasema hiyo na hiyo. Kwa hivyo wakiitwa kule kwa National Assembly wanafika. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ni kama wiki ni siku ya Jumanne tulikuwa naita watu wa Public Service Commission. Tuliita chairman afike mbele ya committee ya cohesion. Chairman alikataa kuja, akasema yeye ako kwa National Assembly. Na kweli tulipofuatilia hakuwa kwa National Assembly. Wengine walisema alikuwa Amerika na hakuwa Amerika, hakuwa National Assembly. Hiyo yote ni kuonyesha hii nyumba inaitwa Senate ni kama hawana kazi naye sana. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, ukiangalia jana katika Twitter nimeshangaa sana na nikaona maajabu sana. Kuna wageni walikuja kwa ofisi ya Speaker wa Senate. Na Speaker akakaribisha wageni ambao wametoka Somaliland, na pale mimi pia nilikuwa ndani. Na huyo msimamizi wa Somaliland ameongea, kuna Kenyans, watu wametoka nchi hii karibu 30,000 wanafanya kazi ndani ya Somaliland, mahali inaitwa Hargeisa. Mheshimiwa Speaker, na akaongezea akasema kuna contractors ya Kenya ambayo wamejaa huko. Na akaongeza akasema sisi hatuna hata mayai. Mayai ile ambayo tunakula ndani ya Somaliland inatoka kutoka Europe. Akasema kuku hatuna, inatoka Europe. Mheshimiwa Speaker, alisema majani chai ambayo ingetoka Kenya iende direct Somaliland inatoka kutoka Europe. Inaenda Turkey ndio inarudi bado Somaliland. Na hiyo majani chai imetoka kwa nchi hii ya Kenya, ni wakulima wetu ndio walipack na kutuma. Mheshimiwa Speaker, msimamizi aliuliza kama kuna ndege ambaye waliuliza serikali ya Kenya wafanye maisha iwe rahisi kwa wale watu wanaishi Kenya na wale wanaishi Somaliland, wakaomba ndege, service ya ndege kati ya Nairobi na Hargeisa. Na akasema imechukua miezi 18 mpaka saa hii hawajaweza kupata nafasi ya ndege kwenda mpaka Hargeisa. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ukikumbuka alisema tunaenda through Djibouti mpaka Hargeisa ama tunaenda through Ethiopia mpaka Hargeisa. Na ile gharama ya kulipa ni pesa karibu $1,800. Mheshimiwa Speaker, hiyo biashara inakuwa manufaa kubwa kwa Kenya kuliko Somaliland. Mheshimiwa Speaker, nilishangaa sana kuona PS Foreign Affairs akijibu wewe kwa Twitter, badala ya kuchukua simu tu kusema kuna kitu kama hiyo na hiyo ingerekebishwa, alijibu wewe kwa Twitter na akadimin hii nyumba. Akasema Senate iko na kazi gani, na akauliza hata sasa namna gani Speaker anaingilia maneno. Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kuleta swali tukifungua bunge kuuliza kwa nini hiyo ndege, safari ya ndege kwenda huko imechelewa. Kama wamelalia kazi, wawache hiyo kazi. Kama wanaweza kufanya kazi hiyo, wafanye kazi yao, wawache Senate ifanye kazi yao. Kwa hayo machache, Mheshimiwa Spika, sema asante sana.
Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was a very sad day in this country. Sad because the Speaker, as a House, we had to take extraordinary measures to send a message to this country that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya is under siege. Under siege, Mr. Speaker, from the executive in relation to disbursement of funds that are owed to members and to this House. Mr. Speaker, we have to make this point very clear, that what the senators are asking for, they are not asking for a penny additional to what they are entitled to. The senators, and indeed Parliament, is not seeking a salary increment for members or for staff. So, Speaker, the only thing that we are saying is that we have offices that we run in our counties. And we run those offices, Mr. Speaker, for the sake of the people that have elected us to represent them in this House. In the running of those offices, Mr. Speaker, of course, there will be operational expenses, which expenses are supposed to be met by disbursements from the Exchequer. This is the third month, Mr. Speaker, since any office of any senator received a penny for operations. And yet, Mr. Speaker, as is expected of us, we have made contracts, binding contracts with service providers for basic things like transport, basic things like even water for the office. These people have kept the side of their bargain, but we are unable to pay them. Mr. Speaker, all we are saying is that enough is enough. We will not mince our words, Mr. Speaker. The executive is operating. Members of the executive are going about their business, their constitutional business, funded by the Exchequer. But this arm of government called Parliament and the judiciary, we are suffering and will not suffer anymore. Mr. Speaker, to add injury to insult, I saw a principal secretary posturing as though he is the senior to the Speaker of the Senate and pretending that he can lecture the Speaker of the Senate on matters of diplomacy. Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon the Senate Standing Committee responsible for matters to deal with foreign affairs, chaired by Senator Cheptumo, not to go and hide in a meeting with that PS, but to bring it to the floor of this House, so we may question him and put him where he belongs. And as you do that, Mr. Speaker, as the committee prepares to do that, I want to join my colleagues in saying shame on the PS. The Speaker, I mean, if the Speaker of the Senate cannot receive a delegation from a foreign country, then what is the business of this House? The Speaker, you know, some things can really hurt leaders. The leader of Somaliland, on record, says that he wants to tighten the relationship between his country and our country. He goes on record, Mr. Speaker, and says that they are consuming a lot of farm produce from our country. For the information of the PS, the Speaker, agriculture is a devolved function. And there is no other place that any foreign dignitary can address matters agriculture better than in the Senate. So instead of the PS, this junior officer, instead of the Speaker, this junior officer coming to the Senate to learn a thing or two about diplomacy, he thinks that he can talk to us about diplomacy from a position of information. Once again, I say shame on him. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, we are not going to step down in demanding for what is our right. Mr. Speaker, I would want to call upon my colleagues as a leader in this House. Mr. Speaker, there's a saying, and it should not be taken literally, the saying that goes that if you set out to kill the king must die. Mr. Speaker, we have already demonstrated that we are not happy with the way the disbursements to this Senate are being done. We cannot, Mr. Speaker, and we should not lower the bar. In fact, what you do is to up the bar in that demand. We must hold those people responsible. We must hold their legs on fire until something gives. Speaker, I will conclude by saying that going forward, I wish as senators, we can demonstrate to this country this level of bipartisanship, not just on matters that affect us, but especially on matters that affect our people. This country, this executive, has taken people for granted for far too long. Enough is enough. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in demanding that the Senate be accorded the resources that is due to it for it to be able to conduct its operations and make sure we are able to perform our functions. Honorable Speaker, I think there is a very serious problem in the national treasury of this country. The national treasury of this country behaves as if it is the treasury of the executive of this country. I think it is time we come up with an independent institution that disperses funds to the three arms of government and to the two levels of government, so that these monopolistic tendencies of national treasury determining who to allocate resources as and when it pleases them comes to an end, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this Senate performs a very critical function. There is no way over 374 billion will be dispersed to county governments and fail to disperse funds that will oversee the utilization of those resources, Honorable Speaker. We therefore demand that without further delay, National Treasury releases the funds that are due for operations for the Senate liaison officers and for the salaries of our staff. Honorable Speaker, on the matter of the PS Foreign Affairs, Honorable Speaker, it is disappointing. We as a continent, as AU, they are fighting to make sure that we have no borders in order to increase the volume of trade and enable us as Africans to exploit the natural resources we have. But we are here castigating a delegation who are already in parliament. Honorable Speaker, where was the Principal Secretary for Foreign Affairs when those people traveled from Somaliland, landed in JKIA, they were already walking around in the city of Nairobi, and they only found it necessary as a matter of loyalty to increasing trade within Africa and within African nations to make sure that the resources that are available in Kenya, that the benefits that Kenya can derive cannot be lost to Europe, Honorable Speaker. I think it is time we have a conversation on how we really want to make trade easy for African countries. Honorable Speaker, I agree with the Senator for Viga and the rest of the Senator and Senator Wambua that the Committee for Defense and Foreign Affairs should actually summon that PS. And it should not only appear before the Committee of Foreign Relations and Defense, Honorable Speaker, it must appear on the Committee of the Whole of the House, Honorable Speaker, because we have other issues we would also like to find out on how that ministry is being run, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I submit.
Senator Eddy.
Mr. Speaker, this House must learn to be angry. And this House must learn to be angry enough. Because this House has been elected directly to represent the people of Kenya. It is in this House that the voices of millions of Kenyans are heard. And the senators you are seeing here, including the members of the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, are people who have sacrificed their ambitions in business to be able to serve the people of Kenya. They have sacrificed their ambitions in civil society, where sometimes the remuneration in those places are sometimes 10 times the money that the people who work in these places are getting. Just to give you a context, today, the most performing bank in Kenya pays its CEO 10 million shillings, and sometimes more per month. This senate that you are seeing here, the spirit of sacrifice that they are putting in this nation is the same spirit of sacrifice that goes into the staffers that they have in their respective offices. It is indeed sad that the National Treasury can choose to hold on the paycheck of the staffers of members of parliament for over 3 months, Mr. Speaker. And yet, the executive is balling in money. I don't agree with the notion that there is no money in this country. But the notion that I want to bring forward to the nation today is that the money that is in this country is being wasted and people in the executive are swimming in this money. And I'll demonstrate to you, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the allocation for members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, to be able to compensate their staffers is 811,000. And 400 on average for the nominated members. We have 416 members of parliament in this country, Mr. Speaker. If you do the math, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly and the Senate only needs about 337 million per month to take care of their staff. Now the Senate is even better because the Senate only needs 46 million to take care of their staffers. For now, 2 months going, we need about 674 million in both houses and just about 80 million for the Senate. Now, Mr. Speaker, Last month, our staffers went without money. The executive told the nation that we are going to a holiday that the entire country went to, and the executive allocated money to be able to plant 150 million trees. This is not me saying, this is the government spokesman saying. These 150 million trees, Mr. Speaker, were procured at 50 shillings per seedling. If you do the math, you get that on that day alone, the executive spent 7.5 billion on trees, and our staffers don't have money. And our staffers don't have money. The other day, Mr. Speaker, we saw the executive sending a battalion of climate change experts who did not even plant trees themselves. We had over 700 people going to Dubai. And out of those 700 people, 400 of them were...
What is your point of order,
Guys,
Senator Metho?
Guys, I'm on a point of order. We are on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. I'm on a point of order.
Conclude, Senator Eddy.
I'm on a point of order. This is how the House
honorable
runs.
senator is on a point of order, and certainly you cannot.
Mr. Speaker, you can crunch your numbers, and let me tell you, fellow senators,
Honorable Metho, if you have
fellow
the correct-
senators, let me
Honorable
tell
Met-
you.
Order, Honorable Eddy, if you would wish to inform the honorable senator with the correct information, certainly. Yeah. Do you have information to Senator Eddy? Senator Metho would wish to inform you.
He will advise me when he's
Okay,
when he's
conclude
talking.
then.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my thought process was interfered with, but I want to just give you context that anytime a member of the executive leaves this country to go to Dubai, the standard per diem that is given to those members is $877. If you do the math, it's 131,000 if you use the rate of 151, which you're currently using. That means that if 400 members of the count of this government left and went to Dubai, then it means that in Dubai alone for those 10 days, the government spent 526 million. If we spend 556...
Order, honorable senators, order. Senator Eddy, kindly proceed to conclude your contributions. Proceed to conclude, please.
Mr. Speaker,
Order,
Mr. Speaker,
honorable senators.
Mr. Speaker, you must protect me. And I want to advise fellow senators. You cannot,
honorable senators.
You will not say that your money is stuck with the executive, and at the same time, you do not want to face the executive. This is what is killing. This is what is killing
Senator
the
Gloria, have your
Parliament.
seat.
You cannot eat your cake and have
Senator
it, fellow
Cherengei.
senators. And especially senators from the Kenya Kwanza side. I am not attacking
Order,
you.
honorable senators.
You will not
Senator
have your cake
Miraj.
and eat at the same time.
Senator Miraj, can we have order?
You will not have your cake and
Senator
eat it.
Eddy.
These are the facts.
Honorable Eddy.
These are the facts.
Order, Senator Eddy. Take your seat. Take your seat. Now, order, honorable senators. Order, honorable senators. Senator Cherengei. Order, honorable senators. Order, please. Order, honorable Cherengei. Take your seat. Order, honorable Eddy. You know, I am... Order, honorable senators. Senator Metho, you know, I'm beginning to see and to understand why, as a Senate, you can never hold together to gain anything. If there's a moment I expected this Senate to speak with one voice, that moment was now. But if this is the way you're going to be transacting your business, you can forget it. You're so disjointed, divided. You don't come together to push for any common agenda. And therefore, honorable senators, I have given you enough time to ventilate on this matter. I've heard you. I have heard you. You have lamented enough. I have received and heard the two divergent views because it's not one view. Clearly on this matter, you don't have a common position. And therefore, we have noted this. Order, honorable senators. That point of order has already been concluded. We will take it up administratively. I'm aware that the disbursement for October to date has not been done. I'm aware that the Senate oversight has been processed. It's lying in Treasury. Honorable senators, let us proceed with the business of the day. I will take it up. I will take it up as your speaker to make sure that these disbursements. Order, honorable senators. Order. Order, honorable senators. Clerk, can they proceed to call the next order, please?
Order number 7, questions and statements.
The Honorable John Methu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare regarding the termination of contracts of community scouts by the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, state the reasons for the termination of contracts for community scouts by the Kenya Wildlife Service. Number 2, explain whether due process was followed in the termination of their contracts, stating the compensation provided to the dismissed community scouts. Number 3, elaborate the measures taken by KWS to fill the gap created by the disengagement of community scouts in order to ensure wildlife conservation is not impacted by the dismissal of scouts. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Professor Tom Ojenda, that statement is dropped.
Nani?
Senator Betty Montet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads, Transport and Housing regarding renovation of stadiums identified to host the 2027 African Cup of Nations AFCON tournaments. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide a list of all the stadiums currently undergoing renovations by the national government in preparation of the games, indicating the scope of works for which each stadium and the anticipated completion dates. Number 2, give details of the contractors engaged to renovate the stadiums, stating the specific details of the contracts entered between the government and the contractors, including the contract sum for each stadium. And finally, state which government entity is overseeing the renovations and provide clarification on the reported involvement of the Kenya Defence Forces, KDF, in the renovation works, elaborating on the extent of their participation. Signed, Betty Montet, MP. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request for statement on delivery of centrally procured learning materials to schools. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise person to Standing Order 53-1 to check a statement from the Standing Committee on Education regarding last mile delivery to schools premises of textbooks and other tuition materials that are centrally procured by the Ministry of Education under the Free Primary Education and Free
What is the point of order, Senator
Day
Chirage?
Secondary School Program.
Senator Mundigi, what is the point of order, Senator Chirange? Your microphone is not on.
Mr. Speaker, looking at the standing orders, we are not properly constituted, Mr. Speaker, and therefore I request you to check.
Clerk, kindly ascertain the quorum. Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Our dear listeners and viewers, the Senate quorum bell is being rung. This is in line with the Senate Standing Order 41 of the Senate Standing Orders on quorum during proceedings of the Senate. And that standing order provides that if at any time in the course of the proceedings of the Senate, a senator objects that there is not a quorum present, the Speaker or the chairperson of that sitting shall count the senators present in the Senate and or the committee as the case may be. 2, if on the count under paragraph 1, a quorum does not appear to be present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall cause the division bell to be rung as on a division. And if no quorum is present at the expiration of the 10 minutes, A, if the Speaker is in the chair, the Speaker shall adjourn the Senate until the next sitting without question being put. Or if the Senate is in the committee, the chairperson shall leave and report that fact to the Speaker, and the Speaker shall adjourn the Senate until the next sitting without question being put. And whenever the Speaker or the Chairperson, as the case may be, is engaged in the counting of the Senate or the committee, respectively, the doors shall remain unlocked. And this procedure has just taken a process where the committee, where the quorum bell now is being run to have the members of the Senate raise quorum for continuation of the Senate sittings for today's afternoon. And earlier on, the Senate the Senate considered rather the motion on alteration of its hours of meeting on Thursday, that is tomorrow, December 7th of December 2023, where they have the Senate voted to adjourn to hold the sittings rather in the morning hours. That is from 9:30 a.m. and ending at 1 p.m. instead of the afternoon sitting. And Senator for Kakamega, while moving that motion, indicated that these will enable the senators prepare and also be able to travel for the YALA, that is East African Legislative Assembly Games that are happening in Rwanda. And then the senator for Nandi, that is Senator Cheragay, rose on a point of order and then he made the Senate aware and the House and the country to be aware that the Senate members of the senators, that is the staff, are yet to receive their salaries for quite a number of time. And some senators have indicated that they have not been able to receive the salaries for their staff for the last 3 months. And there have been issues on the disbursement of money that is meant to cater for the offices of the senators at the counties, as well as their staff, as well as the issues of their drivers and other staff that serve the senators, including their PAs and their researchers and the like, and drivers. And some senators have indicated that they have been having challenges and problems their landlords or the places where they have rented their offices with the rates of them being evicted for lack of payment of their arrears for their offices. And the senators who rose to speak, they castigated the Foreign Affairs, rather, PS, that is PS Singwai, for telling the Speaker of the Senate off for meeting with the leaders of the Somaliland. That is yesterday. And this altercation occurred or took place on the Twitter, formerly, that is now that is X, formerly Twitter, where the PS for Foreign Affairs appeared to be telling the Speaker of the Senate off on matters to deal with the foreign affairs. But the senators who spoke during today's proceedings indicated that the Speaker represents one arm of the government and is also a diplomat in terms of how the nations are governed, and is among the number 3 in terms of command, and therefore cannot be directed on who to meet. And they have called that PS Singwai to order for appearing to direct the Speaker of the Senate on how to conduct himself. And the senators who spoke appeared to lay a lot of blame on the Treasury for how they disband or how they disburse their monies, rather. And when the senator for Nairobi, Senator Sifuna, rose to speak, indicated that even if the Senate takes the route of going to court for in terms of how it has been treated during this term of the government, then even the judiciary is also experiencing cash crunches, and it might be they are indicating that it appears that it's only the executive that is receiving money being padded during the right time when that money is supposed to be disbursed by the Treasury. And quite a number of senators called out the PS for Foreign Affairs, that is Singoe, and among them were senators for Kitui, that is Senator Enoch Wambua, the senator for Marsabit, Mohamed Chute, and the senator for Nairobi, that is Senator Edwin Sifuna. And after that, senators walked out, and now the senator for Nandi came back to the Senate and then made the Speaker of the Senate rather aware that there was no quorum, and thus this is to see if they can achieve quorum to transact their business for today. And as we had indicated earlier, during the commencement of these sittings, in our earlier commentary, there is a bill that was to be read a second time today, and that is the Real Estate Regulation Bill that is sponsored by Senator Chesang, the senator for Kericho, not Kericho, rather for Trans Nzoia, I beg your pardon. And the key object and reasons for this bill is that it seeks to put in place mechanisms for regulation of the real estate agents and real estate projects in Kenya. And they have indicated that their reason for coming up with this bill, that is the Real Estate Regulation Bill, is that the Kenyan economy is the largest economy in East Africa, with the real estate market turnover of 100 billion shillings annually. And the real estate sector has witnessed a lot of fraud in the recent past, hence the need for regulatory regime as the current.
Let us be upstanding. Now, honorable senators, having failed to attend quorum at the expiry of the 10 minutes, the Senate stands adjourned pursuant to Standing Order 41-2A until tomorrow, Thursday, 7th December 2023 at 9:30 a.m. I repeat, at 9:30 a.m. in the morning tomorrow.
The Senate has adjourned its sittings for today, and this is in line with their Senate starting orders, where if there's no quorum, then the Senate has adjourned. That is the starting order that we had read earlier. That is starting order 41, where there is a lack of quorum during proceeding of that senator. And earlier on, the Senate approved the motion to sit tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. rather, in order to allow senators who are traveling to Yala, that is East Africa Legislative Assembly Games in Rwanda, to travel. And the Senate also considered a statement by Senator Betty Montent on the preparedness of the country to host the AFCON. And then Senator Cheragei rose on a point of order, decrying that there is no funding for their offices. And this now necessitated the senators to walk out in protest of lack of funding from the Treasury for the operations of the Senate and also their offices. And the Senate has adjourned until tomorrow, December the 7th at 9:30 a.m. I've been your commentator, Jeremy Chabari. Welcome.
A law And that is at the heart of why we are so disappointed today not to have a Hillsborough law. I don't want a debate in January, I want a law. So can I ask him if he will meet with myself and other members of this House to discuss how we move forward from this point?
Well, my door is always open, and of course, I will speak to the honourable lady and others on the issue of law. It is important also to recognise that part of the statutory framework has moved on. So, in respect of police, for example, I talked about the police conduct regulations of 2020. I recognise, as indeed Bishop James Jones did, that the key thing we want to do is to change the culture. But the law plays a part in that. There have been changes. Let's have some discussions in due course.
Deabte.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I don't think we can repeat often enough, because sometimes I don't think it's understood, just what a web of deceit and lies was put forward by parts of the state, and particularly the police and others, over the years, and the complete effect it had on families who lost loved ones. And I was there on the day in terrible, terrible circumstances. I don't think we forget how bad that's been. And even up to the second inquest, and I sat through a number of days of that second inquest, when lies were still being told during the inquest, when then video evidence was produced by the family's lawyers to saying, well, there you are, you didn't do what you said. I mean, I was absolutely astounded that these people, all the years afterwards, would stick to these lies. So I come back to the point that I want to make, and I made earlier to the Justice Secretary, is that I really think that we can have a culture change, but what happened at that inquest and all the way up to it shows it is such an in-depth problem that it needs something stronger. And that's why, in terms of the duty of candour, it needs to have a legal basis, legislation for it. And I understand, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are some issues around whether it be national security or lawyers' confidentiality, but they could be got round. So he has given some indication he'll listen. So will he listen and change it to make sure there's actually a legal statutory duty?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman who speaks with particular authority on these points? He talks about the second inquest, where people, as you say, were continuing to try to demonstrate the kind of institutional defensiveness. The thing that made a difference there, he may feel, was the fact that there were lawyers there to hold people to account in that kind of case. That's the equality of arms point. And it is important to recognise, I respectfully suggest that now we're in a situation where in this kind of case there will be lawyers to try to expose precisely that kind of defensiveness. So that is extremely important. I respect deeply the points that he makes. Of course we will have a conversation. He knows that there are countervailing issues which he adverts to briefly there. Of course I will have a discussion with him in due course.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are members of this House who were not born when Hillsborough happened, and those of us who were have had lives, careers, families. For the families of the victims to have waited that length of time for justice is intolerable. And then to have it compounded by not having the one thing which ensures you feel justice, that it cannot happen again. So does the Lord Chancellor agree with me that perhaps the only way those families will ever feel they've got justice is if we have a Hillsborough law to prevent it happening again?
The critical thing, of course, is we have to change the culture and ensure that people are held to account for their culture. There are important changes in these measures, as I hope the House will agree. As I said, I've indicated that I'm prepared to discuss with others what further steps are required.
Stephanie Peacock.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's taken 6 years to get to today's Hillsborough Charter, but like many, I ask why it's not a Hillsborough law. The delay for the families of the 97 has been completely unacceptable. So can I press him again on why the government have launched a consultation on improving legal aid for victims of public disasters? Why not simply legislate to do it?
Because we've taken very great steps already. And as I indicated, the sums involved are very significant, around 65 million for the second inquests in respect of this case alone. We are consulting on going further in respect of terrorism and cases where the IPA is appointed. But as no lesser authority than a former chief coroner has indicated, in this space, one has to proceed with caution. We will go via consultation and we will take sensible steps thereafter.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by paying tribute to the families and my city in the determination for justice and for James Jones's report. However, 6 years and 7 Home Secretaries later. It does not go far enough. We do need a duty of candour. So can the Lord Chancellor confirm and let us know that the families seeking justice from Grenfell and the Manchester Arena will get the support and the justice they deserve?
The Honourable Lady, she's absolutely right about there needing to be a duty of candour. Indeed, that is the single most important thing that comes out of the Hillsborough Charter, and it will be buttressed and supported and people held to account by an independent public advocate.
Dame Diana Johnson. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
In terms of the duty of candour that is set out in the Code of Practice for Ethical Policing, which has been published today, why is the duty of candour only on chief officers to ensure openness and candour? And why is it not on every individual officer?
Well, it is. It is. So there are two aspects to it. Under the code, it's right that chief officers should have to be responsible for what is the culture and practice within their organisation. But there is also a further duty that exists on police officers through the 2020 regulations that I referred to earlier. And those can sound, of course, in disciplinary sanctions, including dismissal. So it's available for both.
Clive Efford.
Madam Deputy Speaker, contaminated blood, Grenfell, Hillsborough, the one thing that they all have in common is that ordinary people suffer incredible tragedy, and then the authorities and the establishment circled the wagons to deny them justice. And what this report has exposed is a failure at the centre of the establishment to serve the public. And that this report is calling for candour in those people who represent those public bodies. So why is it that the government, after all this time, has come back here and said no to that one request?
Hopefully that's not quite a fair representation. Bishop James Jones, in his point of learning #1, talked about the Hillsborough Charter. And if you look at paragraph 3 of that recommendation, he talks about candour. We've accepted that entirely. Bishop James Jones' report was not about the law, although he adverted to it. But as I've indicated, we are going to have further discussions. But it's important to notice what steps have been taken thus far.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. People, including those personally affected by the Hillsborough tragedy, will have listened to the government's response today and be deeply disappointed. What's needed, amongst other things, is a duty of candour right across all public organisations, but also private organisations that are public-facing, like those involved in social housing, for example. What's also needed is a real equality of arms, not just some legal aid for the bereaved, but full equality of arms, meaning the same spending for victims as for public bodies. But I just want to finish on this. The opposition supports a Hillsborough law. A Hillsborough law is necessary, as the families have called for, to deliver this. Since the opposition supports it, the government could have got this through and passed in a number of weeks. It still can. I urge the government, before the next general election, to work with the opposition across the House to get this passed. It's what the bereaved families in those communities deserve. And it's what people going forward deserve as well.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his observations, which I've listened to with care. On the issue of equality of arms, it has to be observed, I hope, that the changes that have been made are extremely significant, not least because there is a commitment to ensure that there is proportionality, so we can no longer go back to a situation where the state is using apparently its deep pockets to unfairly load the dice against victims. That is being changed, and that is a direction of travel we are very committed to.
Mike Amesbury.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I listened very carefully to the very considered Lord Chancellor's statement, and a question comes to mind is why not? Why not the Hillsborough law? It's not been answered.
This has, of course, been considered very, very carefully across government departments, and there are countervailing interests, which I'm very happy to discuss with him. I mean, there are issues to concern. If you look at how the bill was initially drafted by Andy Burnham, it's a very low bar in terms of, There's a lot of complexity to it. I'm very happy to discuss it with him. But the central point I want to get across today is that what Bishop James Jones was talking about is changing the culture. As he himself noted, legislation is not always the answer. Changing the culture is critically important. And through this charter with the IPA, we will make enormous strides to ensuring this is part of what it means to be a public service in Britain.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Chancellor, Lord Chancellor, for his statement and commend the Right Honourable Member from this side of the chamber who have doggedly fought this the whole way through. At the heart of any announcement in terms of Hillsborough should be the victims and their families who are left behind and devastated by the lack of urgency that they see taken by government. Does the Lord Chancellor agree that at the crux of any legislation for a public disaster, the onus should be for the victims and their families? And will the Lord Chancellor ensure that the correct provisions are in place to finally compensate those who still today live with this tragic event each and every minute of each and every day?
Well, he makes a powerful point. For the victims, the pain never ends and grief is a journey, as Bishop James Jones reported. But what is totally unacceptable is a situation where victims are left floundering in the agony of their grief in the immediate aftermath of a tragedy. That's why we've set up the IPA. That's why the IPA will be permanent, ready to swing into action to ensure not just that they can provide assistance and support and information, but also hold the relevant agencies to account.
Now.
I've listened very carefully to what the Lord Chancellor says, and I'd like to thank him for his measured and comprehensive and frank approach to this one. I think the primary question that would be asked today, what he has said today, does he genuinely believe that the families of the bereaved and those affected by this would be satisfied with what he said today?
This statement is intended to respond to the 25 points of learning in Bishop James Jones's report. Now, of course, because of the delay, which I've been pretty candid about, it's been too long, there has been a development in thinking thereafter. But in terms of the points that were made in the report, the 25 points of learning, in terms of the 3 ones that were identified by Bishop James Jones, the Charter, the Hillsborough Charter, the equality of arms, the duty of police candour, those have been fulfilled. And they've been fulfilled, I think, in a way which massively advances the state of our country. Of course, people want to have further discussions. I respect that and will, of course, accommodate them. But it's important to note also, in terms of what was requested, very significant changes have been made.
I thank the Lord Chancellor for his statement, and we now move on to a statement. I'll just
upon what you were being told around that time.
I don't think I can't say exactly what I said to my advisor, nor would I necessarily place too much reliance on his reporting of what I said. But I think my impression was at that time that, you know, because of what we've said about borders, because of what we said about the other measures open to us, that it goes back to the questions I was asking. You know, I couldn't see yet the plan. I couldn't see what. So the NPIs were, to me, and this is probably what Imran is getting at in his email, pretty, you know, far-fetched still in my imagination. I was still gestating that.
At a press conference on the 3rd of March, you said that we were, as a country, extremely well prepared. Of course, as it turns out, that was not so. But I want to ask you, the weekend before, you'd received the draft action plan, the contained delay document, which you'd been shown in draft form. And in that document, there is that assertion. We are well prepared and we have plans in place, etc. Do you think you told the world that we were well prepared on the 3rd because you had seen it in that action plan, the draft of which you've been reading over the weekend?
Yes, this is the second. This is the weekend of the
28th of February, 1st of March.
Was it a leap year? Was there a 29th?
I really don't know, Mr. Johnson. I can't assist you with that.
Anyway, it's certainly true that I was the general reassurances I was getting were that we were well prepared. So the scales had not yet fallen about, for instance, test and trace.
Indeed, and you shook hands with patients at the Royal Free Hospital on the 1st of March. You know that, of course, you were later criticised for that. May we take it that you hadn't seen, or at least you hadn't been advised of the contents of the Spy B paper of around that time? In fact, the paper came later, the 3rd of March, but advice was given generally before that, advising against greetings such as shaking hands. Did you know?
I didn't, but I do think that it was. I shouldn't have done that in retrospect, and I should have been more precautionary. But I wanted to be encouraging to people, and so I think it's on that day that I go to Colindale, to PHE, and although I've been told, sorry, this is in my statement, but although I've been told that we have a fantastic belt and braces system, I was a little bit concerned about. I had a feeling that perhaps they weren't really as across the situation as I've been led to believe.
Mr. Hancock gave evidence to the effect that he was told on the 18th of February by Public Health England that the test system was unsustainable, that it wouldn't be able to operate beyond the handful of first few hundred cases. Did you know that when you visited Colindale?
No, and in fact, I think I gave a clip to the media, which I gave some figure for the number of daily tests that I believed that we were doing, and I do remember Chris being CMO, being quite sounding confident, at least to me, about the number of tests we were capable of doing it at around that time. I can't remember the exact.
All right. Cobra on the 4th of March, you chaired that. You were presented with a paper, Potential Impact of Behavioural and Social Interventions, 56158. Again, it's illustrative of what you were being told at the time, Mr. Johnson, because it makes plain that behavioural and social interventions can be applied as part of an HMG response, including the expected impacts. The note doesn't cover economic, operational, policy considerations. SAGE has not provided a recommendation of which interventions or package of interventions the government may choose to apply. So the first question is, did you understand that SAGE was never going to be telling you, Mr. Johnson, you must do this? It could only ever provide advice about the nature of the interventions and the consequences and the risks and so on. It could never tell you what to do or what you had to consider doing.
That's right. I mean, SAGE is like it's a doctor-patient relationship. The doctor can't order you to do things. The doctor is not responsible for what you do. The doctor says, if you do this, then that. If you fail to do it, then the other, and that's basically how it works and should work.
Was the chief medical officer around that time, the 4th of March, telling you, however, you must now start considering these behavioural and social interventions? And of course, the first one, you'll recall, it is imposed on the 12th of March.
Yes.
But we don't know when you first started to.
So as I said before the break, actually the CMO and I had a heart-to-heart about non-pharmaceutical interventions, about a lot of aspects of it, particularly from a public health point of view, the costs, and he really stressed that. So we had thought about it, and I could see that that was the direction in which things were starting to go. And it's only a few days later when I actually tell the public, I think for the first time, I think it's the 9th or thereabouts, we're going to have to start restricting social contact.
And that answers perhaps my next question, which is, why was there a delay between the first debate between you and the Chief Medical Officer about the possible imposition of these behavioural and social interventions and the 12th of March, when the first really significant intervention was imposed?
I think there we have to go back to the earlier conversation that we had about
mindset,
timeliness. No, not mindset, but mindset.
Going early.
About going early. About the issues that were raised by going hard, going early, which later became the mantra, but which in March the problem was that if you, so I was told repeatedly by both CSA and CMO, you risked bounce back and behavioural fatigue, and yet more behavioural fatigue as a consequence of bounce back.
There's a graph on page 2 of this document which shows what the waves, that's to say the transmission of the virus, would be likely to be, depending on whether or not there was mitigation, that's to say intervention, or no mitigation, or moderate intervention. And you can see the different colours of the graph of the lines, Mr. Johnson, depending on whether or not they were very stringent or less stringent. So it was plain to you, wasn't it, that if no steps were taken, there would be a massive first wave. That's the black wave. But if it was reduced to some extent, there would be moderate transmission, the blue wave, and then a more severe intervention would be the high transmission reduction. But to make absolutely plain, if we look at page 5, there was at this stage on the 4th of March no mention of a lockdown as such. There were a range of potential interventions, from stopping large events, closure of schools, home isolation, whole household isolation, social distancing, impact. We can see there on the right.
All these things.
But no lockdown.
No, and that's quite right. So this is the sort of the double hump graph that really became very influential in all our thinking, and indeed is what, I'm afraid, tragically, is more or less what happened. But the measures that we could take to depress the first curve, first wave, were all very much couched with caveats about timeliness and not going at the right moment.
And it's right to say, isn't it, that the wording that the Chief Medical Officer used with you and spoke in Cobra on the 2nd of March, must not be implemented too early, was with reference to interventions, plural.
Yes, and if I could offer a suggestion as to what was really going on, I think that, and it is clear, we simply didn't realize how fast the disease was spreading, and if you remember, the predictions were that the peak was going to come in mid-May or June, I think, and it was really well in advance of that.
If we go back to page 2 and the graph, you can see that it's put there in terms of spring, summer, and autumn.
Yeah.
But there was no suggestion on that graph that the peak of the black unmitigated wave would be the end of March or the beginning of April.
That's correct.
Speeding up now, because we're coming now to the final decisions in March. WhatsApp messages from Mr. Hancock, or rather his WhatsApp group, the WhatsApp group he shared with Mr. Cummings and Mr. Slack, suggests that around this time on the 5th of March, they debate telling you to stop saying business as usual. Did you recall that debate with them?
I don't, and nor do I even remember saying that, but using the phrase. But I think what I might have said is, until such time as we tell you to do X, Y, Z, it's business as usual. But I don't remember that debate.
You've described the genesis of the herd immunity debate. May I just please show you a WhatsApp entry or WhatsApp communication from the 14th of March, so running forward a bit to the weekend of which there was a distinct change in strategy.
Yeah.
If we could just look at the 14th of March, 7:17 a.m. So I think it's page 3 of 48399. We can see I'm not sure that's the correct document. 48399. Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. So just to put in its context, Mr. Johnson, over the weekend of which there was a change in strategy, there were repeated conversations between you all, of course, but you raised at this point the point of the impact of a herd immunity debate. And you make the point further down the page, I think it's at 649, 39. Yes, here's the problem with the herd immunity argument. So just very shortly, you've described to the inquiry how the herd immunity debate arose at the beginning of March, the 5th of March. It appears that you were still debating, or your advisors and you were still debating the full meaning of and the nature and the extent of the herd immunity debate as late as the 14th of March. It appears to have trundled on as a bone of contention for weeks.
Can I think I can understand I'm looking at this for the first time, but let me try to explain what I think this is about. What happened on the 12th of March was that there was a press conference in which we were trying to deal with I had to level with the public and say, I'm afraid a large number of people are going to lose their loved ones before their time. And it was a pretty grim press conference. And in that discussion, we were asked about how the way through. And I think Patrick said the idea was to flatten the curve, suppress the virus, with some measure of herd immunity by September being, I think, a good outcome, was what he said. And I think he also said something to the effect of, it might not be, you need to suppress the curve, but not, it might not be necessary to stop everybody or even desirable to stop everybody getting the virus, because again, you might want some measure of herd immunity. Anyway, that was the moment when people all pricked up their ears and say, are they trying to allow this thing to just pass through the population unchecked with a view to establishing herd immunity, which was not what we wanted, not what Patrick meant. And we had to do quite a lot of work to clear it up, because our objective was to protect the NHS and save life, and to save life by protecting the NHS. That was our objective. Our strategy was to suppress the curve and to keep the R below 1 as much as we could. We were going to use everything we could to do that. Herd immunity was going to be, we hoped, a byproduct of that campaign, which might be very long and very difficult.
At the same time, in Cobra on the 9th of March, in Sage on the 12th of March, in Cobra on the 12th of March, and in an interview that the Chief Medical Officer gave to the press on the 13th, there were repeated references to the need to delay the peak of the virus as opposed to suppressing it entirely because of the risk of an uncoiled spring, of it bouncing back, the second wave. If we could just have that document back, 48399 and 7:39:42 a.m., please, the 14th of March. probably page 3 of that document, 48399. It appears that this debate about herd immunity, the debate about on-cold spring, had caused you considerable concern, because at 7:39:42, you say that's why I was concerned when some on the team were suggesting last week that we actively need a proportion of the population to be infected. And then you say civil service need to grasp. What did you mean by that?
So can't say exactly what civil servants I was thinking of in that context. I think probably what I mean is, look, we've set a hare running by mistake. I think Patrick, really did a huge job to try to clear it up. We all need to set the public's mind at rest and explain what we're doing. It's protect the NHS and save life, and that's the priority.
Further down the page, 10:49:15. In fact, it's the 15th of March, page 6 of this document. You could be seen to be saying, given what's happened in Italy, we simply have no time.
Yeah,
and we can see that
the 15th,
10:49:15. There we are. 2/3 of the way down the page, 15th of March, we have no time. We've jumped forward, but that, of course, is the Sunday, the 15th of March, in the middle of all the debates that you were having with your advisors. Yes. All right. Just to finish off some other points which you've addressed, in relation to behavioural fatigue and you being told that the timing of implementation of interventions was vital. The evidence before the inquiry shows that the SAGE meeting on the 13th of March, that's
yes,
to say on the Friday, you weren't, of course, an attendee at SAGE.
No.
Was told, and the minutes of the SAGE meeting make this plain, difficulty maintaining behaviours should not be taken as a reason to delay implementation. Ben Warner, your advisor, was present at that meeting, and he was reporting back to number 10. Were you told that, in contrast to what you've been told about the need for timing and behavioural fatigue and so on, SAGE was in fact saying by the 13th, don't take that as a reason to delay implementation?
Well, in effect, yes, in the sense that that was and I wasn't told that particular detail about behavioural fatigue not being a reason to delay implementation. But what I was told was that we had a new data. We were at least, 5 to 7 days further on, possibly more, in the curve than we thought we were, and that the margin of manoeuvre that SAGE had seemed to think we had and was offering to us on the 12th, if you remember, they say then, there are 4 things you can do: self-isolation for 7 days if you've got any kind of symptoms. Though even that they say we could postpone till the Monday, the 16th. Then there's household isolation for 14 days. Then there's a couple more measures. Advice for the elderly, for the vulnerable, and then for those over 70s. And those last 3, they say can actually be put off for 1 to 3 weeks on the 12th. Then on the 13th, that's the key moment, really, because that's when I get called back on the Friday evening. I come back on the first thing in the morning, and you know the rest.
On the 12th of March, there was a COBRA meeting, which you chaired, 56209. There is at page 6 a graph.
Yeah.
And
now I remember looking at
this page is entitled "What would the effect be on the NHS of interventions?" So
what date is this again?
This is the 12th of March, so it's the Thursday. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see graph A, no measures. So that's to say no interventions. And on the bottom right-hand corner, graph B, measures 1 and 2 implemented. 1 and 2 were 7-day isolation and Number 2 was household isolation. If we could scroll back out again, please. In both graphs, the red line, freeable beds, and the black line, total NHS beds, make plain that whatever you do, unmitigated or mitigated through measures 1 and 2, the NHS will be massively overwhelmed.
Yes.
What did you make of that?
I was bewildered, to be honest. I remember looking at that graph and thinking, in either case, we are facing an absolutely intolerable situation. And although I clocked it, I thought, well, there must be a reason why we're not being told to go urgently. Maybe that reason is all the things that we've discussed. So I have to admit, and I think I say in my statement, that I think at this point there is a certain amount of incoherence in our thinking, because that graph makes it clear that things are going wrong, and that is cleared up the following day.
You didn't yourself ask, firstly, what can be done to bring the blue part of the chart below the black line? Why are we talking in terms of these modest measures, which may or may not even be imposed this week, when we've got to bring the blue part below the lines?
I didn't.
And secondly, why didn't you ask, why are you presenting me with this and at the same time telling me we mustn't go too early with interventions?
Well, because I'm afraid, listening to the advice I was being given about timeliness, and I was and looking with puzzlement at the graphs, and what I should have done, and though thankfully it was only a matter of a day or two before the thing was resolved, what I should have done was, as soon as I saw that graph, said, hang on, this is not coherent with what you're telling me about timeliness, because I do remember looking at it and thinking there was something amiss.
Around this time, on the 5th of March, going back to the beginning of the week, the 5th of March, there was a COVID-19 meeting at which advice was given to the effect that a prohibition on mass gatherings was not necessary. Did you, throughout that week, as you had, in fact, during earlier weeks, receive advice that for epidemiological purposes, at any rate, there was no need to shut mass gatherings, sporting events?
That was but to be fair to the people who were giving the advice, it sounded reasonable at the time, given what we knew, because what they said was, look, if you do this, what you will do is push everybody into the pubs and the warm enclosed spaces where transmission will be even faster. So that was the point that was made.
You were, by your own words, of course, only following the science rather than being directed by the science. It must have been apparent to you that this was presentationally disastrous to keep mass gatherings open whilst you were debating the closure of schools as one of the possible interventions.
That's true, but I felt that it was certainly the public didn't get it, that was true of many of the measures that we put in place throughout the pandemic. There was often a gap between the public conviction about something and the scientific certainty about the effectiveness of that measure. Borders would be an example. Masks might be another example.
You've highlighted the importance of communications, Mr. Johnson, in terms of leadership and in terms of beginning to direct the country, that there were terribly difficult times ahead and impossible choices to be made. The closure of mass gatherings would have sent a vital message, would it not?
And I had already told people on the 9th, so several days before, that they were going to have to restrict social contact. And on the 12th, I had given them I think a pretty powerful and in many ways frightening message about what was going to happen.
But
and the effect, so forgive me, the effect of that, I think did show up in people's behaviour.
So that we are clear, the Cheltenham Festival continued the week of the 10th. There was an Atletico Madrid match, and mass gatherings, sporting events are not.
You are watching Sound County Talk. Watch, share, like, subscribe. Tunaingia vijijini, mijini na hata jijini kukuletea taarifa mchana kutwa. Usiku tunaketi kitako, tunadadavua tukichanganua taarifa na makala muhimu yanayokuhusu wewe na familia yako. Ungana na Bernard Ngozi kwenye Open Forum Political Show kuanzia saa 4 usiku hadi dakika zake kila siku ya wiki kwenye Sound County Talk. Tukutane Sound County Talk.